Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue.
Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. Comedian Chris Rock took Will Smith and his wife, Jada Pinkett, to the barbecue at the end of his Netflix comedy special, Selective Outrage. Now, in Selective Outrage, Chris Rock decided to finally address the slap he received from Will Smith at the Oscars after he made a joke when he was doing a monologue saying that Jada Pinkett, Will Smith's wife, would be starring in G.I. Jane 2. Now, after Chris Rock made this joke as part of his monologue, Will Smith stormed up on the stage and slapped Chris Rock and demanded that he keep his wife's name out of his mouth. Now, in the aftermath of this slap incident at the Oscars, Chris Rock has remained silent as Will Smith has made multiple apologies for this slap and received multiple penalties as related to his actions at the Oscars. Now, on that 2022 Oscars, it was supposed to be Will Smith's night where he was supposed to be nominated for his absolutely brilliant performance as Richard Williams in the movie King Richard. Unfortunately, that whole Oscar nomination was completely overshadowed by Will Smith's reaction to a joke made about his wife. And in the aftermath, Will Smith wound up getting banned from the Oscars and had several projects delayed. And in the aftermath, Will Smith seemed to be the one who was on the defensive while Chris Rock remained silent. And now that I take a critical examination of why Chris Rock remained silent as Will Smith continued to go out here and make multiple apologies, it looks like he went out here and was playing chess as related to the entire situation. Now, I am no fan of Chris Rock, and I basically believe that he's a buck-dancing, bojangling minstrel who's out to get curry favor with all of the white supremacists in the media arm of white supremacy. But I'll have to say that he basically played this situation to his benefit, because him remaining silent made it where he was the one who looked like the one who optically appeared better in comparison to what happened with Will Smith, who was dealing with a lot of different stressful situations, like having his wife Jada Pinkett go out here and say that she was in an entanglement with her son's friend August Alsina, and then go out here and emasculate him on her own talk show, Red Table Talk, where she basically talked about how she was out here having this affair, and then had Will Smith on here talking about how he was agreeing to be in a bad marriage for life. All of these things led to people winding up getting a very negative image of Will Smith, and instead of him going out here and dealing with the entire situation of Jada Pinkett, emasculating him on Red Table Talk and revealing this affair by going out here and filing for divorce, what happened was Will Smith let these situations continue to simmer and boil, and instead of him confronting Jada Pinkett about her affair, what he did was decide to take his anger out on Chris Rock, who he thought was the weaker individual. Unfortunately, as he went out here looking to take his anger out on who he thought who was weak, because Chris Rock was smaller in stature, he didn't understand he was dealing with a man who was playing chess, and a man who made a brilliant power move as related to dealing with Will Smith and his emotional behavior. Because what happened with Will Smith was he did not know how to navigate through his emotions as related to all of the pressures he was dealing with as related to an adulterous and ungrateful wife. And because he did not know how to navigate through his emotions as related to this adulterous and ungrateful wife, what he did was try to hold in all of that anger and then hoped to go out here and take that anger out on Chris Rock, who he believed was weaker, and as a result, he wound up when he went out here to slap Chris Rock, wound up knocking himself out as related to being one of the biggest box office champs in Hollywood, and wound up dropping down his A-list status back down to the C-list. And this was all because Will Smith didn't really have good control over his emotions, as Chris Rock went out here and made a joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett, starring in a G.I. Jane 2 joke, and because he was upset about his wife's affairs and his emasculation, he hoped to regain his manhood by going out here and slapping Chris Rock, hoping that this would impress Jada Pinkett. But Jada Pinkett did not have any respect for Will Smith, and in the aftermath, even less people had respect for him because of the way he handled the situation. And the reason why people lost respect for Will Smith is because, one, he just came out here and did not check Jada Pinkett, who basically disrespected him on a world stage. And as he just continued to let this woman disrespect him, he didn't even understand that when this is your night, when you're being nominated for an Oscar, you need to be in control. And sadly, because he wasn't in control, what happened was he didn't understand that even though you were feeling about your wife getting dissed, you need to not act on those feelings. And when he went out here and acted on those feelings, what that did was make him look like the aggressor, and it made Chris Rock look like the person who was being victimized by his assault. And that's what happened to Will Smith. And what happened is that he basically he put himself up to be the butt of a joke, and he also gave Chris Rock the advantage in the situation. And Chris Rock took advantage of the situation by going out here and not saying a single word, letting Will Smith become his own worst enemy. And as he became his own worst enemy, all he did was what many beta males do when they get embarrassed: keep trying to apologize, hoping that people will eventually try to forgive him, when in actuality, if he just said nothing, people would have understood. Unfortunately, he just kept on talking, and as he kept on talking and allowed Chris to remain silent, Chris gained the upper hand. And as Chris gained the upper hand, what he did was use this to go out here and make himself some money at Will Smith's expense. And the white media also took advantage of the situation because Will Smith wasn't controlling himself. So they went out here and started controlling the narrative. Going out here, Netflix then offered Chris Rock $40 million to do a Netflix special. So Chris Rock at the end wound up making a lot of money at Will Smith's expense, and that was just the cake as related to everything, because Hollywood is a business, and that's where Chris has an advantage as I saw it, and basically played masterfully here. He still understood that Hollywood is a business, and in a business your goal is to make money. So the longer Chris Rock remained silent about the so-called slap, what he was doing was raising the price for people to hear his reaction. And as he was sitting there raising the price for his reaction, what Will Smith was doing was lowering his value in the entertainment industry by making all of these numerous apologies. And even worse, he wound up losing the most important intangible as a man, his dignity and his respect, because people looked at Will Smith and they did not see a man who they could see as a leading hero. No, what they saw was a pathetic individual who had no control over his home, no control over his business, and no respect in his own home. And that's what Jada Pinkett did to destroy Will Smith. She basically destroyed his brand, and even worse, Will Smith further reinforced the destruction of his own brand by going out here and saying, oh, I'm going to continue to stay with Jada Pinkett, even though this woman has gone out here and had a so-called entanglement with his son's best friend, and gone out here disrespecting him on a live stage on the Red Table Talk. this man continued to stay with his wife, and that's where people started to stop seeing Will Smith as somebody they could sympathize for and started to see Will Smith as a pathetic individual. And once they saw him as a pathetic individual, that laid more to Chris Rock's advantage. And what Chris Rock did was, again, continuing to wait this guy out. That he waited and got the offer from Netflix to go do a comedy special. And what Chris Rock did that was absolutely brilliant as related to strategy was he sat there and did the entire comedy special, then waited to the end to finally deal with the slap. So after people had gone out here and spent their $8 or $9 on the subscription to watch Netflix, they had to sit there and watch the entire comedy special to get to the part where we finally addressed the slap. And that was a very masterful move as related to strategy in the entertainment business. So Chris Rock not only got paid, he also got people to pay for Netflix, got them to pay to watch his comedy special, got them to sit through the entire comedy special. And that was brilliant strategy as I see it, because what he did out here was basically take this entire slap situation and he made it for his own personal profit. So as Will Smith was losing over $30 million of his own money that he invested in Emancipation, his slave movie, and was basically snubbed at the Oscars and was basically made to look like a clown, Chris Rock came out of the whole situation making over $40 million, getting people to go sub to Netflix, getting them to go out here and watch his entire show. And Will Smith is sitting there looking like a pathetic loser because in the aftermath of this whole slap, Chris Rock not only made one joke about Jada Pinkett, he then made more jokes about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, taking them to the barbecue in the last 2 or so minutes of the show. And in that last 2 minutes of the show, making many of the same talking points that many YouTubers like myself have made as related to Will Smith over the course of a year. And this basically made Will Smith look like an absolute clown. And the only reason why he's looking like a clown is because he became his own worst enemy. Because what Will Smith did was he allowed a woman to get him to stop thinking about putting himself first and putting his image first. And he got caught up in his feelings about a woman who wasn't looking out for him. Because any woman of character, and I've said this in multiple videos, because I learned this point from the brother of logic and common sense, when he made the point, if a woman is looking out for you, she's going to be looking out for your image by stopping you from doing things that embarrass yourself. Because if Jada cared about Will, after that joke was made, she would have pulled his coat and told him, no, this is your night. Nah, we're not going to do this tonight. What you're going to do is leave this alone, and we'll deal with this later on. But Will Smith's wife did not respect him, and she allowed him to just storm up on the stage and go up here thinking that he had a covert contract where he would get respect from his wife, and his wife led to him embarrassing himself. And now Chris Rock has taken that to his advantage, went out here and barbecued Will Smith in that comedy special and made a whole bunch of money at his expense. And basically, as he was doing the comedy special, he also said he was raised to understand not to fight in front of white people. And again, I can agree with that talking point, but the whole thing is, when you fight in front of these white supremacists, what they do is look to go out here and use one against the other. And that's what the white supremacists did as related to Will Smith. They used him to go out here and destroy the black male image. And then they rewarded Chris Rock handsomely for going out here and further tearing down Will Smith. So Chris Rock basically played this game beautifully, and he got himself a big W at the expense of Will Smith's L. But Will Smith doesn't really understand what happened here. he doesn't understand how he basically damaged his own public image, because I don't see if anybody wanting to go see his movies at this point, because he's a pathetic individual. He's not the action hero people used to know. And we see that with the failure of Emancipation, the slave movie that could not get any money at the box office, did not get any nominations at the Golden Globes or the Oscars. People do not respect Will Smith anymore. No, they see Will Smith as a pathetic individual who has no control over his household, no control over his wife, no control over his career, and that's going to hurt him in the long run, because people are not going to want to pay to see a guy who cannot get his shit together. No, they pay to see guys who have their stuff together, and Will Smith basically destroyed his own brand, and he allowed Chris Rock to get the last laugh at his Netflix comedy special. Now, I know that this Netflix comedy special is being dragged by some people, but Chris Rock doesn't care, because he's laughing all the way to the bank. And I heard that he made some jokes about Michael Jackson, he made some jokes about R. Kelly, and he made some jokes that, again, people would find offensive, but the whole thing is he's a bootlick, doing what bootlicks do, but he wouldn't have been able to do any of this had Will Smith just knew how to work like a man and knew how to navigate through his emotions, because I myself have been in the situations like Will Smith has been in. I've had people calling me retarded when I was in junior high school and high school, and I knew how to just brush it off, because I know that if I act on those feelings, I'm going to be the one who has to suffer the consequences. And I remember one time in 2008, I was in a food bazaar in the Bronx, and some stock guy called me Fat Albert, and what I did was, while I had the feelings about that situation, I didn't get into it with that guy. No, what I did was I contacted the corporate office, and the corporate office gave me some gift certificates, and they went out here and castigated those employees. So that's how you handle a situation like that. And Will Smith didn't understand how to do this, because he was so caught up in his feelings about his wife, not understanding that it was his wife that was the one. She wasn't looking to be a helpmeet to him, and instead she's been a hindrance, because here's a woman on your own night, and on your night she's not looking out for you and looking out for your family. No, she sits there and directs you to go out here and go fight a dude at one of the biggest events in the entertainment industry, further tarnishing your image, further blurring everybody from seeing your accomplishment, being a black man who won an Oscar for playing a positive role. And instead, all of that was done in, and again, Chris Rock again took Will Smith to the barbecue, roasted him up extra crispy, and I'd have to say he not only roasted him up extra crispy with the jokes that he did, because he never ever put Jada Pinkett's name out there at all. So he honored Will Smith, ironically, by saying he kept her name out of his mouth, but he still called him a B word. And I call him more than a B word, which is pathetic, because a pathetic man, again, sits there and wallows in a situation that is toxic, doesn't make any efforts to change, and even though he's the laughingstock of his entire industry, he still decides to stand by a wife who has basically showed him almost the 7th level of disrespect as related to Tariq Nasheed, and he's still sitting there looking like a pathetic loser, and all the while he's basically tarnished, again, his own brand, while Chris Rock basically made a whole mint of money on a situation by just remaining silent and letting the people in the media come to him. No, he did not give away his story for free in an apology tour like Will Smith did. No, he sat there, remained silent, sat there, let the price go up, and then finally, once he got the deal that he wanted on his terms, he went out here and made $40 million, made Netflix a bunch of subscriptions that they lost after the aftermath of that whole Cuties debacle. So everybody got paid at the expense of Will Smith, and Chris Rock basically got the last laugh on The Fresh Prince by taking the crown as related to going out here and making himself king for a day in Hollywood. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my absolutely fabulous African-American comedy like the first season of All About Nikki. You can find that on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to pick up my screenplay book, All About Marilyn, and learn about the struggles of black actresses in Hollywood, you can find that screenplay on Amazon.com, along with my other action-packed fantasy fiction like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and my other novels like The Thetas, A Recipe for Success, and Eternal Night. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today.